Welcome back to the Silver Lining Herbs podcast. I'm your host, Josie Young, and I have my co-host, Chance Shutnick here. We're here to talk about the natural way to take your horse's health into your own hands. Today, we have a topic that is kind of a pretty hot topic, especially this time of year, and it's laminitis.
Literally.
Yeah, literally a hot topic. So that's laminitis in your horse. But we're going to talk about what it is, how to address that, what to look for, and really how to take those into your own hands naturally and overcome those things. So, Chance, first off, let's just talk about laminitis. What is it specifically?
Yeah, simply put, laminitis is just inflammation in the laminae of the horse's foot. And the laminae is the soft tissue surrounding the coffin bone. So when that soft tissue gets inflamed, it causes pain in the horse's foot, causes heat in the horse's foot, and then it starts to detach from the inside of the hoof wall. So when you think about how your finger connects to your fingernail, the tissue in between your finger and your fingernail is the laminae. So what happens with laminitic horses is that tissue gets inflamed, it starts to detach from the inside of the hoof wall, and because the deep digital flexor tendon running down the back of your horse's leg and connecting it to the bottom of the coffin bone is pulling on that, and that tension causes rotation in the coffin bone, and in severe cases it can protrude out the bottom of the horse's sole and obviously cause a lot of pain, discomfort, lameness, and things like that. So that's mechanics of laminitis. But leading up to how horses get laminitis can be caused by different variables.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people think, feed has a lot to do with it, and I'm not saying that it doesn't, but there's other things that can cause that. But especially this time of year when we're talking about springtime, that new grass that's growing, there's a lot of sugars in that grass. We talk about excess and deficiencies a lot, and things in moderation. And I'm not saying that grass is bad for them, but you gotta take that into consideration that too much can be harmful. And so I know with my horses what I like to do this time of year, because I do love that grass and it is good, it has a lot of good things about it, but I like to go on 12 and off 12. So when I kick my horses out on the grass, I let them graze overnight. There's a lot of things out there on our pastures that they might need. We talked about the dandelion and the burdock and things like that horses could get into for other ailments. But on 12, off 12 is a good rule of thumb. The grains, we like to try to stay away from the sugars and the grains, the molasses. I don't believe that horses need corn by any means. Stay away from that. We believe in whole oats, right? And we just give a little bit to pass the herbs through the system, and then also the other effects that oats have for the horses as well. But yeah, proper shoeing can be a huge factor in this. If you have a horse shoer that's not getting the correct angles or is just running through it, not paying close attention to detail, that's why it's extremely important. I know with our horses, you can get behind the 8-ball if you have somebody that's not taking care of your horse's feet, and it'll cause more issues in the future and cost you a lot more money down the road. So in my opinion, horseshoers are the best money to spend. I love spending money on horseshoers because if they're good at what they do, they take care of your horses and take pride in that themselves, then they're going to keep your horses healthy. And personally, I hate getting under a horse. It's a lot of freaking work.
Right.
So those are definitely some things, just proper pin care. If your horses are always standing on hard surfaces, give them a place to get out of those hard surfaces, get on some soft dirt or sand or things like that. What's some other things, Chance, that I might be missing here?
Well, feed is absolutely crucial to the whole thing. Proper farrier work is crucial too. You talked a little bit about turning your horses out and giving them a place to move, your pen care and things like like that. And that's crucial, because you'll see, like, we've probably all seen, like, going through social media and seen like these ridiculously looking horses that have just been neglected for years, and they're, you know, have the elf shoe out and things like that. And a lot of times that's just from not being able to move around and things like that. You talked about the sugar spiking, also too, like, having too rich of feeds on a very consistent basis. Those are all different elements that will definitely contribute to that. So we have to look out for all those things. So get your horses moving, you know, make sure you're staying away from the sugars and the sweets, and you have variety of vegetation in your feed. Don't just go ahead and turn them out right away. Like, ease into it, and you know, make sure that their body's just not getting overwhelmed. And then, you know, some symptoms that we need to be cautious and look out for is like the metabolic situation. So like the pony breeds and draft breeds and Morgans and things like that will get the cressy neck over the tail head and the fat pockets on the cressy neck and the fat pockets over the tail head. Yeah. And that will lead into laminitis issues. Yeah. So we have to just be always looking at our horses, seeing how they're doing, monitoring their urine and the manure, and seeing any abnormal characteristics in that. So those are some easy things to look for. So prevent that. Yeah. So one thing that we talk about here a lot about silver lining is like preventative, is following the natural grazing patterns of a horse. And so we recommend kidney support, liver support to all horses in the spring to follow the natural grazing patterns of the vegetation that's ripe in that time of year. So that's a great preventative thing to do. But if it is a situation where your horse got into the haystack or got in the grain barrel, or you know, triggered laminitis because of something like that, we have the kidney support that's really beneficial for them, but then we also have the laminae support. And the laminae support is so good to help increase circulation to that foot, reduce the inflammation, and help that laminae reconnect to that hoof wall.
Yeah, I think about like when you peel your fingernail back, how bad that hurts. Yeah. I mean, if you've ever done that before. So
my daughter just lost her pinky nail recently. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, you know, one thing that we want to be, you know, just tell everybody here is that, you know, you can reverse things. You know, things don't just happen, you know, just because of bad luck. You know, we have a good rule of thumb. If you walk in the woods, you got to walk out of the woods, right? So something happened to create that. So we have to reverse engineer the process and walk back out of that. And that's exactly what the Laminitis support is for this situation. There's a lot of good herbs. We believe in variety. The variety is extremely key. That's why it's so important to let your horses be horses at certain times. If you have that ability, let them graze. Their body knows exactly what they need, and they're going to crave those things if they're available. If they're not available, that's why we have the Laminitis support. Right? And so we can speed up that process. I think about a horse, remember the yellow horse that my dad, he had a lady that reached out to him, and her husband wanted, you know, the vet said, put the horse down. And the wife did not want to do that. She says, I've heard about this guy that has a product, and I would like to try it. And I'm going to tell you, if you put,
and this was 20 years ago, probably.
This is 20 years ago at least. And I'm going to tell you this right now: you can only put a horse down one time. You cannot reverse that process. But that's why it's so important to try everything before you do that. And so this guy was extremely mad at my dad because he just thought, you know, he was putting this horse through misery and this and that. But, you know, he started the process, figured out this horse, you know, he was rotated. He was drastically rotated on every hoof. Like,
yeah, I think he actually was protruding out the bottom of the sole 3 out of the 4 feet.
Exactly. The horse couldn't even stand up. He was laying on his side, you know, and he goes out there and you know, starts the process, starts, you know, giving him his whole oats, gets his feeding program put on the right track, and, you know, just inch by inch, you know, this horse started sitting up, and then the horse, you know, started standing up, then the horse started walking, then the horse started trotting, then the horse was running through the field. And this took a few months to do, but man, you know, you just think about that, that process. This is not something that's going to happen overnight, but what we believe in here is getting to the root of the issue and fixing the issue. If you do that, the symptoms go away. You cannot just treat the symptoms, because if you just treat the symptoms, then you'll always have the problem.
Right.
Right. And so the way to do this is to give the body what it needs when it needs it. The body is extremely healing. And if you give it the tools that it needs to do the job, it does the job better than any person on the face of this earth. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, the story that you're talking about is incredible. I mean, literally that horse could not stand up, and then, could barely walk to the water trough, and then, like you said, is trotting like 4 months later, I think was the timeline, if I recall the video correctly. And all that it was given was the laminate support and the kidney support, along with adjusting the feed program. And you're exactly right in that. You give the body what it needs when it needs it, you'll see positive results from it. And when you're talking about the symptom side of things, like the laminate support, what I see is sometimes some clients are like, I'll just go with the laminate support right now. But the root of the issue in that horse's situation was the kidneys. The kidneys needed to be supported to get that all out of the body, and it really complemented and expedited the healing program. Now, if we have the horse that has like IR, insulin resistance, like the metabolic kind of thing, then we pair up the laminate support with the thyroid support to get the really good results that we need there. And a personal testimony that I had, my mom had a horse several years ago, and he always was a heavier set horse and would want to be the easy keeper and things like that. And he had some slight founder, nothing to the degree that this yellow horse that Josie's talking about, but had a digital pulse in his hoof, was tender footed and things like that. And so we got him my mom got him on the thyroid support, laminate support, and got really sound off of that. The one thing that I remember your dad talking a lot about for like these types of horses, because people want to put pads on them and shoes and things like that. But this made a lot of sense to me after Mickey said it, is keep those horses barefoot, because that's going to help stop that horse's coffin bone from rotating, because they actually have pressure on there. And the frog is a pump for the horse. They're pumping blood there. So we want to consider the farrier care that goes along with these types of horses too, because if you're protecting that horse and keeping that horse's foot elevated, yes, they're sensitive and things like that. Pain's there for a reason. Pain's there to be a signal to the body to know limitations. Of course, we want to keep our horses comfortable and stuff like that. Yeah. But our society is a little bit of the pain-free mentality, and it can be a detriment to these horses as well.
Yeah. You talk about circulation. That is extremely key. This is just an amazing topic to talk about. I love that we have a product that can help out with this stuff and put the power into your hands as the horse owner, right? And give you guys a voice in this. So is there anything else that you want to add to that, Chance? Or
I think that story from the yellow horse is the biggest takeaway that I have from this subject is, like, sometimes when we have these laminate situations, Janie Freed was another one that Buxton horse that she had. I mean, oh my gosh, that was crazy. But like what Josie said, like, you can only put these horses down one time, and we can't decide the birth date and we can't decide the end date, but our job here as horse caregivers is to make the quality of life as positive as we can for them, and giving them what they need when they need it is the way we do it. And that's what we're here at Silver Lining Herbs for. And we have a great team to assist in that.
Absolutely. And I think about, breaking out of the norms. I feel like the horse community has always wanted, especially in the last 20 years or so, when we think about, insulin resistant horses of that full looking horse. This is a point that I wanted to add earlier, is everybody wants this like big plumpy, like full looking horse. But for the longest time, I mean, my grandpa, my dad, they said horses are not supposed to be this big, stocky, like full looking horse. They're supposed to be lean and athletic and agile. And, if you look at how a horse is really put together, that's what they're supposed to look like. And so I think about, my horses and stuff, when you give them that natural feed. I rodeoed for quite a few years and hauled my horses all over the country, and I didn't feel like my horses were breaking down like a lot of other people's horses were. It's because of the stuff that we're putting in their feed. So just keep that in mind. That was a point I wanted to make a little earlier. But just have comfort in knowing that we do have a product here, the Lamina Support. If it's something that you enjoyed the conversation in this podcast and you feel like you have a horse that needs this, they can find the Lamina Support on our website at silverliningherbs.com. And, next week we've got a great subject again and talking about Cushing's.
Yeah, Cushing's is something that, you heard about rarely 10 years ago, and now it's a daily conversation, and we want to dive into that.
Yeah, and once you hear, the symptoms and things like that with Cushing's, you'll start being aware of horses, whether they're in your pen, your barn, or your neighbors, that you're like, oh, my horse could benefit from that. So that's what we're doing here on the Silver Lining Herbs podcast, is bringing that awareness to you. If you like these conversations, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast channel. And next week we're going to dive into Cushing's. Chance, thank you for the conversation today. It was a great one. And we are helping you bring horse health into your own hands. Until next time.